This Sunday's home game against the Colts marks the final game of the Jaguars' 2019 regular season, and it is a huge relief that it is coming. It's been a horrible year for the Jaguars. We locked in another double-digit loss season, but once the regular season ends, I think it becomes one of the most fascinating times in the calendar year, and that is the NFL offseason. And for the Jaguars, there's going to have to be some really tough decisions to be made. The following Monday, we could hear that General Manager Dave Caldwell and Doug Marrone are both gone, are both out of here. And if they retain those guys, most notably Doug Marrone, then Doug Marrone's going to have to make decisions on what kind of assistant coaches or coordinators is he going to retain. The next thing you know, free agency comes up, and then the draft comes up, and you really get to see how a team actually builds their franchise. And then once the regular season comes about, you can actually see whether the decisions that they made personnel-wise and coaching staff-wise, if it actually will pay dividends. And this offseason, the Jaguars are going to have to make a decision at quarterback. Obviously, a few different things have happened at the quarterback position, and in this video, I want to dive a little bit deeper into that subject. So let's get it. So the Jaguars completely turned over the quarterback position in 2019. The two guys that we had on the roster in 2018 were Blake Bortles and Cody Kessler. Both of those guys eventually did get cut. Then in free agency, we signed Nick Foles to a 4-year, $88 million contract, and we also drafted Gardner Minshew in the 6th round, who turned out to be a little bit more than we expected. But we will start off with Nick Foles. Nick Foles, it's really tough to see what you have in this guy. This guy might have one of the weirdest NFL careers I have ever seen in my life. This guy, at his ceiling, has been very, very good, but he has also had a very low floor. For the Jaguars in 2019, he's played 4 games. In those games, he has a 65% completion percentage, 736 yards, 3 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, and a 6.3 yards per attempt. And really, for Nick Foles, it's been probably an unfair year for him. I mean, he looked really good in the Chiefs game before getting injured. Then after he came back, he looked a little bit timid coming out the shoulder injury. I don't know if they rushed him back too quickly. The Jaguars really expecting him to be a big spark for the Jaguars, but behind the Jaguars' offensive line and just not being comfortable in the whole flow of the game, he didn't work out, and then we eventually had to, bench him, and then Gardner Minshew, who was actually doing pretty good up to that point, came back, and, he's been a starting quarterback ever since. And really, when you look at Nick Foles, I mean, it's crazy. In 2013, he had 27 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Then that was his best year of his career. He followed that year up in 2014 and 2015 by having a pair of 10 interception seasons. And then we don't really see him for a little bit as he's moving around to St. Louis and Kansas City. And then he comes back for the Eagles and wins them a Super Bowl in 2017. Sparks them at the end of the year. Then in 2018, he did some good things in the postseason there. But then he comes back to the Jaguars and just didn't have a very good year. So this guy, we wanted some consistency out of the quarterback position after Blake Bortles. But when you look at Nick Foles' resume, he has been far from consistent. That's a fact. And, at the end of the day, this guy's, when he won the Super Bowl for the Eagles in 2017, he had the best roster in the NFL around him. And, in 2013, he also had a bunch of really good playmakers around him. So, Nick Foles, he's due a lot of money next year. The only way he's not on the roster is if we trade him. And the only way we'd be able to trade him is if we give up draft assets, much like the Texans did in 2017 when they got rid of Brock Osweiler. They shipped him out to the Browns and gave them a 2nd-round pick with them to pick up that deal. So, that'd really be the only way. Maybe Miami would want to take him off our books if Miami is really in a 2-year rebuilding window, but he's most likely on the roster next year, and he'll be competing for the starting spot. Next, I want to talk about Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew had actually a pretty good year for the Jaguars, I would say. Now, Gardner Minshew this year, he was 5-6 as a starter. He had a 60% completion percentage, 2,976 yards, 18 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, and he also tacked on 337 rushing yards. It's actually the second most rushing yards on the team. And actually, Leonard Fournette and Gardner Minshew are the only players on the roster that have over 100 rushing yards. And that 2,900 passing yards actually broke the franchise rookie record for most passing yards in a season. So that was pretty good out of Minshew. And Minshew, when you look at him, he shows some good things. He shows that he's smart. You know, he called more audibles at the line of scrimmage over any quarterback, over Blake Bortles. You know what I mean? Like I saw him call more adjustments than Blake Bortles did. And he's, like I said, he's also smart. He also takes care of the ball really well. I mean, 5 interceptions, not bad. Not bad for him. But there are some limitations to him. Like he's undersized. He's got kind of questionable arm strength, and it seemed like as the year went on, he regressed in a little bit. I mean, it seems like really for every player in the Jaguars roster in 2018 and 2019, it seems like the whole entire roster regresses. But it just didn't seem like he was seeing the field as well, as the year goes on. And then, we have to, Gardner Minshew is definitely on the roster next year, but we have to ask the question, like, is Gardner Minshew truly a franchise quarterback? I don't know yet. I don't know. And, for that reason, I don't think that quarterback should be off of the board for the Jaguars in the first round of next year's draft. And that's not me giving up on Gardner Minshew at all. It's just me looking at the last couple of years. Most notably since 2017, the Jaguars have been kind of questionable at quarterback. And being that we passed up on quarterbacks, we passed up on 2 NFL MVPs. In 2017, we passed up on Pat Mahomes, who wound up winning the 2018 MVP award. And in 2018, we passed up on Lamar Jackson, who is going to be the 2019 MVP of the NFL. And I'm tired of looking back on these drafts and saying that we could have had this guy that turned into an MVP, and if Gardner Minshew just turns out to be a career backup, we're going to look like idiots if we pass up on a guy. So really, there's 3 things in the NFL that will bring you that'll bring you success in and year out. The first thing is you have to be good in the trenches. That's offensive line and defensive line. Defensive line, you have to be able to rush the passer. You have to be able to be stout in the run game to be able to stop other teams. Because if you get the quarterback, 10, 15 seconds to throw the ball, they're going to find somebody open. And you have to be good on the offensive line. If you can have an offensive line that can consistently protect the quarterback, you're going to be good. And, if that offensive line can also smash the opponent right in the fucking mouth in the run game, you're going to be good. You know what I'm saying? So, it doesn't, you can be handicapped at quarterback or skill positions. If you have great offensive line play, the offense is going to be able to be churning. Another thing is good coaching. You need to have good coaching. It's the reason why the Patriots are, winning the AFC East every single year. It's the reason why when you look at the Packers, Aaron Rodgers has been out of the playoffs for so long, and then this year under Matt LaFleur, he's been right back in it. And you also look at the Steelers as a great example of good coaching. You look at the Steelers, man. They lost Ben Roethlisberger at the beginning of the year. Their big star playmakers with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown are no longer on the roster. And then, they get replaced this year by guys like James Conner and Juju Smith-Schuster, who have both been injury-plagued this year. They've been playing with subpar quarterback play with Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges this whole entire year, and they're sitting here at 8-7. That all comes down to Mike Tomlin being a great coach. So you had to have good coaching. And the last thing that you need good quarterback play. I mean, it's going to be hard to consistently be good every year if your quarterback is below average, because guess what? Roster turnovers happen a lot. Just in 2017, we had probably a top 10 defense of all time in the NFL. And then 2 years later, you're running out there with no names. The common NFL fan probably wouldn't be able to name anybody in the back 7 besides Miles Jack and AJ Boye on the roster. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have no-namers running around out there. But if you're able to turn over a roster really well with a good quarterback, you're going to be competitive year in and year out. So, really, when I look at it, the only quarterback that I would consider is Tua Tagovailoa, because I don't think Justin Herbert's going to be very good out of Oregon. He reminds me a lot of Drew Lock. And you also have guys like Jake Fromm and Eason. I don't like any of those guys. The only guy I would consider is Tua Tagovailoa. And, when you look at the current draft board, you have Cincy at the number 1 overall spot, and you can pretty much Sharpie in Joe Burrow for that spot. Picks 2 through 4, you have the Redskins, Lions, and the Giants, who are not going to be taking quarterbacks. And then, the Jags are sitting at 6 right now. Right before them is the Dolphins. The Dolphins could very well pull the trigger on Tua. You look at it, they have 3 first-round picks in 2020 and 2 first-round picks in 2021. And, they could very well take quarterbacks. And, with a couple teams behind us, you have the Chargers and Panthers, who both could be looking for quarterbacks. So... And I know a lot of people bring up the fact that, look, we could easily, tank 2020 and get Trevor Lawrence first overall in 2021. I think that tanking is near impossible in the NFL. The Dolphins try to tank, but, now they're sitting there with the number 5 overall draft spot. It's just, I don't want to go into a season saying that we are going to commit to losing to get our guy. And with all reports out there, there's a very good chance that Doug Marrone and Dave Caldwell are staying. And if they stay, they are not going to be losing because they're going to be still playing for their job. So, by me saying this isn't me giving up on Minshew, but until you find a quarterback, you don't have a quarterback. And I don't want to keep passing up on MVPs because we think we have the position figured out, but we don't. But at the same time, I'm not saying that we need to draft Tua, at number 6. All I'm saying is that all options should be considered. Like, the quarterback spot, that should be a consideration for us at the number 6 overall spot because we don't have the position figured out just yet, in my opinion. Now, it's going to be really interesting to see who actually is the day 1 starter for the Jaguars in 2020. I think that they're going to open up the competition again and let Nick Foles complete with Gardner Minshew for that spot. It's just, a lot, you have, the only thing about Nick Foles is you have to have the offense perfect around him, which sucks. It sucks that, like, nowadays, man, you need to find guys that are not necessarily mobile, but guys that can actually move around because I don't know how much we'll be able to fix the offensive line after next year. I don't think the roster is very good. I think we're going to have to completely rebuild the offensive line. And, maybe the expectations for Nick Foles are too high, but, when I give a guy 4 years, $88 million, it's much like when you compare, Andrew Norwell, left guard, to our right guard, A.J. Cann. A.J. Cann is probably worse, but a lot of more blame is going to go on Andrew Norwell because you're paying him so much damn money. Right now, we give Minshew a lot of passes because, he's a 6th-round rookie, and then Nick Foles is this $88 million guy. But going into next year, Gardner Minshew will no longer be a 6th-round rookie. He's going to be a 2nd-year NFL vet. So, hopefully this offseason, he can really improve and, look at his weaknesses and improve on those so it becomes a better quarterback next year. But, I don't think that we have the quarterback position completely figured out, and I'm not taking quarterback completely off the board for the Jaguars with the 6th overall spot. So thank you guys for watching the video. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram as well. I'm very active on both. On Twitter, I'm always tweeting stuff out, and I'm actually going live on Instagram a little bit later today, so you can find me at UCF_Jaguar. And subscribe to the channel for continued Jaguar content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and go Jags.